Yeah, first, just before we go to questions, welcome to everyone. On behalf of Lutz and I and the club, ownership, but also our staff, and I'm sure our fans also, we wanted to just take one moment at the beginning to pay our respects to a very dear and loved colleague of ours who very sadly passed away just recently, unexpectedly. His name was Mike Otten, our director of security. I believe a lot of people knew him. He spent many years in law enforcement in St. Louis. Big guy, even bigger heart. Thoughts and prayers are with the family, all their loved ones, and it was a tough couple of days for all of us here in the organization. We just wanted to say that they're all in our thoughts and prayers, and we wish them a quick recovery.
Yeah, just a quick word from me. I was privileged enough to visit him in hospital just 2 days prior before he passed away. And I'm thankful for that moment that I could have with him and his family who was there as well. Obviously, we're all very shocked about that, and so is the team, because he was a very important member, a father figure. You know, everybody looked up to Mike. Whenever there was anything, Mike always helped, and I think he will be truly missed.
Thanks, guys. We'll move over to questions. Tom, please kick us off.
Brother, did you expect this transfer window to be as active as it was, and did you feel the roster needed a fairly significant rebuilding?
Yeah, I think it comes down to what happened in the first part of the season. I think it was necessary for us to make changes. Obviously, it was more like circumstantial changes because we had such a big number of injuries that we had to make some moves. But however, I think the way the situation developed, we could already make moves now for 2025 and further ahead for the future. So yes, it was a very busy transfer window, and I think if you would have asked me 6 weeks prior to that, we probably would have not given you that high of a number. But sometimes it's also what does the market give you, what does the market bring, and where do we need some reinforcement. I think that was the factors we need to really include in our decisions, and I think we had no choice. We wanted to do it, we wanted to improve, and I think that's why we had a very busy time.
I would just add, it's really a continuation of last time we were here. We said that we wanted to make improvements. We weren't seeing what we wanted in terms of reaching our goals for this year. The improvements weren't just making managerial changes, it was also making player changes. So that's just a continuation of wanting to be better and having high standards, wanting to get to that level that we want to be at.
How much better is the team now than it was before?
I think it's better. That's why we made the moves, Again, we had players, I think, which played on really high performance before their long-term injuries, like Thomas Ostrak, who was playing his best football since he was here. Celio really developed into a starting 11 player. And that was the moments when you think we need to stabilize the squad. We can't just have our players who came up from 32 to put everything on them and say, guys, now you're the guys who need to win us the games and you need to be in charge of the team. Unfortunately, that's when it happened. So the players we did sign, I think on every position we brought in, they are an improvement. They have a certain experience. They are coming from a good professional background, and after a lot of scouting and a lot of discussions, we made the moves which we believe are making us not just a better team for now, but gives us a really, really good 2025 ahead. So it was more strategic than I would call it a quick shot or being desperate about having not the greatest season. So there was a lot of thought in it already for the future.
We'll go to Brendan.
Lutz, you answered a lot of my question there, but just like motivation for you, it sounds like it was more big picture than let's try to fix it for the last 6 or 7 weeks of the regular season this year.
Yeah, I think that's part of my job to think a little bit ahead. And as I just said in the answer before, yes, you can try to make that quick fix, but that's usually when you make mistakes, when you act out of desperation and you don't really think too far ahead. There was players on our list which we did sign in the end, which were there since a long time. I just give you the example of Simon Becher, who was a player we tried to bring in the draft where we were not allowed to. We tried to sign him from Vancouver where we couldn't get him. 3 times lucky. So we got him in the end of the day. Plus, we were always talking about a number 10, a central offensive midfielder of a DP level, which we got with Marcel Hartl. So that's players which we were chasing for a long time. That's players which we had on the radar for a long time. And then you make that moves with a long-term thinking. But then again, I don't want to make it sound like the season is over. It's far from over. I think you could see in the Leagues Cup that we do have an improved squad. We have a good quality. We have players coming back from injury, and that we are a difficult team to beat. So we have 9 more chances to beat 9 different teams, actually 8 different teams, because we play Minnesota twice. And we still believe that we have a chance to go very, very close towards the playoffs. But that's up now to the coaching staff, that's up to the team, that's up to the players. And we are very positive with the impressions I think you got in the Leagues Cup, but also what you get every day on the training field.
Does your blueprint change at all then this offseason, having accomplished so much in the last month and a half from a personnel point of view?
I think it's all about the characteristics and the playing style. So I think that was always what we wanted to do. Did we change the idea how we want to play? Definitely not. It's still players who are coming from with a very, very similar background. We signed all the players which knew each other from before, which gelled together, which played together, for example, in the under-21 German national team. I think if you look at the chemistry between Edu, Cedric Teuchert and Marcel Hartl, these guys understand each other not just from a language point, but also the way they played together before in the under-21 German national team. So no, we want to stay true to our ideas. I think to our values. We still want to be a pressing team. But did we want to get better with the ball? Do we want to improve with the ball and create more chances? 100%. One doesn't really take the other one out of account, and this is why we made these moves.
Justin?
There is a little bit of difference with how Bradley Carnell and how John Hackworth play, just in terms of how they build up possession, like you said, with players on the ball. Was that something that you took into account when you were looking at players as well, or have these players just been on the list with these qualities that you're hoping that can transcend?
Do they set up a bit different? Yeah, I think before we played a purely pressing, counter-pressing style where the ball was not really... It was important, but we were more focused on one way. I think Hack implemented a little bit of a different approach with the ball, but then again, we have a different quality amount of players available as well, so it makes it easier with that. It's I don't really want to look too much back in the past. There is no point what we did before. I always said it, 2023 was a fairy tale, but let's put it in the cupboard and leave it there, because it's 2024 and there's a few years to come. So we need to look forward, and it's no point to be happy what we did in 2023, because I'm not happy what we did in 2024. And that's why I believe in Hack, and the way we build up, the way we perform, the way you see the communication on the field, it definitely improved, and that makes us positive.
And then for either of you, this is just kind of about the transfer window in general. Chris Albright in Cincinnati earlier this week talked about the difficulties of how the U.S. window matches up with the European window, and how those stressors make it easier for European teams to kind of hold MLS clubs, not say like a hostage, but to hold the clubs to a harder negotiation stance. Was that something that you both ran into in this window, or can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think we said it last time we were here. The difficulty with the misaligned seasons, and therefore the windows, makes it a little harder. Even the fact that our signing window closed already, but European signing and selling window is still open until the end of August, that creates some disadvantages to our side. We can still sell players, but we can't sign any players. So yeah, of course, we need to take that into consideration and work with the timings that we have and the restrictions that we're given.
Yeah, I think you do miss a little bit out on the last moment moves. Like just as an example now, Chelsea is trying to loan out 15 or 16 players because they have a complete built squad. And there is lots of teams who try now to make that last minute moves. So unfortunately, MLS teams cannot jump in there, which is it's a bit of an issue. I think it would be very good if we would align that, and always the 31st of August would be that day where most of the countries are closing. But we need to work with that, what US Soccer and MLS and also the Canadian FA gave us. And, it's no point to cry about it. We just have to be quicker than others.
Matt?
As much as you guys can, I was wondering if you could talk through the process of bringing on a new designated player. Marcel Hartl, obviously, I think, in a lot of people's eyes, the biggest signing this window. Being the first designated player, what are the conversations like amongst yourselves with ownership in taking that leap in bringing a player of not only his caliber, but his cost?
I would say I'll start, and then I'll pass over, of course, to Lutz. I would say the background is one of wanting to constantly improve the team. This is something that we will always have, whether we had a good season or a bad season. You always have to be trying to improve the team. And obviously we had built, Lutz and team had built a great roster for year one, also thinking about some room to improve in the future if we needed to. So that was great and gave us the flexibility to be able to have that consideration around bringing in another DP. When we looked at the positions in the squad and where we wanted to reinforce, that of course is a Lutz technical view that says, we think we would be able to get the most out of putting more investment along this position, which was our attacking midfield position. At that point, we have conversations with ownership, and we try to figure out what can we do from a financial perspective to be able to bring in a DP. And of course, looking at the salary and roster budget guidelines to figure out how we can execute that. All that created an opportunity for us to look at that starting from the beginning of the year. And Lutz and his team are constantly looking at opportunities, especially in that position where we said we wanted to try to reinforce, and the opportunity came. I'll pass over to Lutz to describe the rest of the picture.
Yeah, having I think we're all very aware that whenever Edu Löwen was not playing, that little creativity was missing, and having the opportunity to create that space with some of the guys left, and we created some roster space, that getting a DP10 or 8-10, whatever we want to call it, in Hartle's case, was a big opportunity. We did look at lots of different options internationally, but also nationally, of course. And I believed in the start that there is no way we can get Marcel Hartl because he had offers left, right, and center. And once we realized that MLS actually is something what he wants to do and something he's interested in, even though having so many offers from Germany, I think it was a very easy decision to look at his stats, to look at him as a person, to look at him, of course, as a player, and then having a talk with him about how does he feel about coming to St. Louis, and having sorted everything out with Columbus, which we all knew that Columbus was the team who basically had his rights and wanted to get him in, that we were the ones in the end who get him here to St. Louis. I think it was a great move for us, and I think he showed in the first few games, scoring and being involved and getting assists, getting penalties, that he makes us better, that he gives us a lot of flexibility in the attacking third, that he's a great character to have around, and I still stress on that. There's thousands of great players out there, but the personality, the fit in the changing room is super important for us. That's what we also want to tick off that box, that it's a guy who comes in and he fits to the values and the ideas we have from a personal point. And Marcel had all that, and I think the impact so far he had was promising. I don't think he's at 100% yet. He's getting close, and I'm really looking forward to see how he even gets better than he was so far, and will be a very important member of a successful team.
Sorry, Matt, I'll just add one more thing. I think it's important that, I think there was and is willingness and commitment to make more investments into the team. We have the good fortune of having a sporting director that can find great players that come on a free transfer, like Marcel. That it was not a requirement. It's not that we said, find a player that can come for free. We said, find a very good quality DP that can fit in this team. And Lutz was able to bring that player and convince him to come here, who had many, many offers, which is obviously a great situation to be in, but it was not a requirement.
And then, Lutz, this is your third transfer window since the team started play. What are some things that you've learned as far as what you just mentioned, having to deal with Columbus, having a player's rights, and what are your thoughts overall on building a roster in the MLS ecosystem over multiple transfer windows?
It's different than it's in Europe for sure, because you have certain limitations, which makes it super interesting. You have lots of talks within the club internally to find the right ways how to fit it in the budget, how to fit it in the roster compliance. So it's a very different system, but it's fun. Actually, I enjoy it because you need to put a lot of more thought on it and a lot of more calculations in it than it just on a very open market where you say, well, the one who bids more gets the player in the end of the day. Is the discovery list an easy thing to work? Definitely not, because a team can block you out if they want to. We saw now also what happened with Marco Reus, where everybody thought that we are the team he will come to, and there was zero truth in that one. It was just simply probably the nationality, which made people to believe that. So in the end of the day, I think we need to realize that a discovery list is definitely something you need to work on very, very smartly, get the players on as early as possible, or you have to trade it like we did also with Columbus. But yeah, I think for me the most difficult thing stays that we have to have supplemental roster players, which obviously have to be on a certain fixed salary, and that makes us sometimes limited in players we want to. But on the other hand, everybody has the same rules, everybody follows the same rules. And at the end of the day, that's the one we have to follow as well and try to build the best roster possible.
Schwartz?
Lutz, you said earlier that you had to ascertain the interest in the MLS in the players. How much interest generally is there, do you think, in European players, quality European players, in playing in the MLS?
Tom, more and more, I think the league is growing tremendously. The level is growing tremendously. I mean, you're looking now again at the Leagues Cup where the US teams are just doing much better than the League Max teams, and the League Max was years ago still considered a more expensive, better league. I can't see that. I mean, you're taking out Cruz Azul, you take out Club America in the top 3-4 teams. I think that the MLS becomes a better league, and I think that has to do with the quality of players who are coming over. You know, I mean, we do talk, of course, about the Messi effect, and there is only one Messi in this world, and all his friends he brought along, they decent players as well. So that is one way. But then you look at other teams who are bringing young talent from South America, to bring young talent from Europe. So it's just a growing level. I think with the World Cup 2026, it will get even better. I think the league will peak directly after the World Cup, and I think it's then up to us, to the ownership of all the clubs, to the league, and to the sporting guys to keep the talent here or even improve it. But I think from looking at the way the league is growing and the interest, the future is really, really bright.
Daniel?
2 quick questions. Lutz, I asked Coach Hackworth on Tuesday. He told me in typical fashion to ask you,
okay.
So I will. A lot of transfers coming in. I'm sure you had more on your list. Were there some names in particular that you were really striving to bring in?
Let me check quickly on my list. Yeah, it's a few. So I know what you're going to ask me, but carry on, please.
That's fair. And then a question for both of you guys. You mentioned that we're all playing by the same rule book, but St. Louis is very different than LA, Miami, some of these big markets, especially in recruiting talent. What are some of those challenges, and maybe what's your pitch to some of those players to bring them to a town like St. Louis?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some natural differences, obviously, and we just got to find the players that like to be in this sort of environment. Not everyone wants to live in LA and Miami and be in that sort of environment. And living in St. Louis offers a lot, especially to players with families that value being able to be somewhere where the club is super relevant, the fans are super behind you, there's full stadium, and you can kind of have a life where you're focused on the sport and not revolved around fan pressure, and be able to really do what you love. I think it is not hard to once you're able to engage with players and describe both the attractiveness of the league and the attractiveness of the club in the city, to find players that are very open and even excited by that. It's not going to be always the same players that are excited by LA, Miami, New York, but there's lots of players out there.
Yeah, I just want to add a very blunt statement as well. I think, if a player wants to play in the MLS, he simply comes here because he likes LA, Miami, or New York, then I think he thinks more about a holiday than about professional football. I want a player who comes here because he wants to play at the highest level. He wants to improve. He comes here to win titles, and he wants to be a member of a team. So the destination with palm trees and stuff like that, we maybe don't have that, but I think we have a great ownership group, we have a brilliant stadium, we have a nice facility, and we have a top football culture or sports culture in the city. So that's the players what I'm looking for, where the heart is in there, and not where the wife is telling them I want to live in Miami for 2 years. So that's a simple way how we're looking at our transfers. Players, they want to be in St. Louis, they believe St. Louis is the right place to be, and everything else on the fancy side that doesn't really apply for us and disturb me.
Tom?
The roster freeze isn't for a couple of weeks still. Are you still looking at people now?
Tom, I was waiting for the questions, and it's a long time. As you know, we can't bring anybody in anymore, so that's a good thing, I think, as well. We know what we have available. Transfer list in Europe closes 31st of August in most countries. Other countries even open till the 15th of September. So that means there is always possibilities, but there is nothing right now on the cards what we could tell you.
You made a cryptic thing last week when the transfer window closed, but how is the interest in Josh Sargent?
It's a good player for a start, you know. I mean, being a St. Louisan always creates a certain connection to our club, which we are happy about. He's a 24-year-old US American national player who plays in Norwich. I mean, that's a great achievement. But of course, you know, I mean, we are honored that there is rumors out there and people talking about Josh and us, and I believe it's a very natural thing, simply where he comes from. Let's see what the future brings, Tom.
Since signing Hartl, who are your 3 designated players now?
So right now it's still Roman Bürki, it's still Klaus, and now it's Hartl. We bought down Edu Löwen, which is now a 10 player. So we just maybe get another question out. So we have decided for the model of having 3 DPs and 3 under 22 players instead of another model which we could have chosen. So we did that.
Tim Parker had been critical about the negotiations. How did you feel about the negotiations that they went in trading Tim?
Yeah, it's you know, was a business move, a very simple move. Tim was a very important member in the first year and also in the second year, but we also were aware that his contract runs out in the end of 24. We started to negotiate very early in the year, and it was always very clear that we want to keep the player. In the end of the day, it came down that we couldn't find an agreement, and we had an opportunity to go for a trade with Henry Kessler, which is younger, which has a contract, and that's why we made the decision.
We'll go to Matt.
Lutz, what's the status of Selmer Pedro related to St. Louis City?
Yeah, he's still under contract, as you know. You know, his loan expired in the Czech Republic. We're still working on opportunities, but right now it's very likely that he will come back. He will be loaned to City 2. We just loaned we brought up Jaden Reed as a left back, so City 2 is right now without a left back, so it's very possible that Selmer Pedro could play at City 2. At the same time, as the list is still open, we're still looking at options for him to maybe put him on another year loan in Europe. But we will know that in the next few days.
Brendan?
Lutz, I think I asked you a similar question about Nico last off-season. I'm asking about Anthony Markanek. Even though he's gone, do you look at him as a success story for this club in terms of player development for a guy that was, I mean, an afterthought in Denver last year? He comes here, starts a bunch. You guys bring some value back in return. Just what his story now means to the club that he's gone.
Honestly, definitely for me a success story. You know, we took him from the second team of Colorado, where he played most of the games in the MLS Next Pro. Played not many games in the first team. He came here and he played 29 games as a young left back who came out from college. So he had a good impact for us. And as you said, sometimes you make moves, and we got another left back in now on that position, and we also brought Jaden up. So it's sometimes giving a player an opportunity. And I really felt for Anthony in this move, but I also believe that it was for him the right step. He has a good way of developing now in Minnesota, and I think he did a really, really good job for us. So I think that speaks for us in a very positive way, that we brought a player who had very little MLS experience to leave the club with good MLS experience and being wanted not just by Minnesota but also by other clubs. So was painful from a human perspective. Great kid, really interesting player, but I think for him it was a very similar move like last year we made with Lucas Bartlett, where we saw that he had a great opportunity to develop somewhere else. And look at the way Lucas came all the way now at DC United, turning into one of the really top defenders in the league. And that's, I think, a very good thing for us to say about our youngsters who we bring in.
Thomas Ostrak, has he gotten his green card?
Yes, he did.
Anybody else in the works for getting one?
That's state secrets, Tom. I can't tell you. And I'm also not the immigration law, but we are working, of course, on green cards. Thomas got his green card, and he still recovers now from his injury. Looks very good. So he had his surgery done, and I mentioned it before. He had an unbelievable start into the season. Played his best football here. So we're looking forward, after a season-ending injury, that now with the recovery and all the treatments, that he will be able, pretty sure, into the next pre-season, and will be again a player we will be very happy about.
Any progress on the coaching search? Have you put together a list, or are you content with how John is going right now?
It's a process which we said very clearly once Bradley was dismissed, that we take our time in making that decision, that we want to wait till towards the end of the season to make that final call. But of course, there is lists and there is a process, and we're looking at candidates all over the world, but also especially on the MLS market. But as you said, there is John Hackworth, and I know John very well. John was here, one of the first guys I brought in. He did a great job with City 2. He is very valuable also as technical director, but now see him working with the boys on the field, seeing the chemistry, getting the team back together, and also the way we playing football right now, I think speaks a lot for John. I think the ball is in his court. We have 9 games. He will be in charge for now, and then we make the decision when the time is right.
How bad would it be, or how disappointing would it be if you don't make the playoffs this year? What does that do for the team if you don't?
I mean, it would be disappointing in the same way that you set your objectives every year. You want them to be a little bit stretched and to be able to push yourself, but it wouldn't be anything dramatic. We are fortunate to have had an amazing first year, and that has given us all belief in what's possible. And half of the teams don't make playoffs every year. This happens, especially for expansion teams. The normal thing would have been to not make playoffs last year. So of course it's a disappointment in the sense, it would be a disappointment in the sense of any objectives that we set ourselves, whether they're sporting objectives, financial objectives, commercial objectives, fan growth objectives. Not hitting any of those is something that that will give us lessons learned for the next year to do better.
Got time for 2 more? Go ahead, Justin.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the academy pathway and just how you're feeling about that progress so far. Obviously, in the first 2 years, having as many homegrowns as you've had is impressive, but how do you feel about the steps that you're making in the right direction as far as that player pathway of getting them into the first team?
Looking at City 2, and we sometimes have 5 players who coming from our academy on the field, a few more guys on the bench. I think that's what we always spoke about when we started the club, to give local talent lots of opportunities. Makai Joyner is a very promising player, with Caden Glover as well. Miggy Perez, who is on loan out there, that's still, guys which we have a lot of hope and a lot of belief in. And there is a lot of youngsters coming in. We decided to go away, that we do not do it like other teams from states nearby, to bring in players from all over the country. We wanted to be always the first look at our own players, which I think so far, looking at the way we performed in recent years at the national tournaments, we always had a team at least in the semi-final of the nationals. We had in our first year of being actually built, we made it very far in the nationals. It shows it's an unbelievable talent pool, and that we believe in that. And City 2, we clearly say it's a development team, so we want to include more and more youngsters in there. Again, it comes down, of course, you want to win as many games as possible, but then do I play a 26-year-old who is maybe better than an 18-year-old? I believe we go for our 18-year-old, and then the results has to be a little bit put in the background there as well. However, definitely that we want to keep on doing that. We believe that the local talent will get opportunities to play out there, and we want to be known as a development team. We want to be known as a team who gives young players opportunities. I
would also, just one thing to add on that. I mean, I think the importance of developing our own talent is central to the vision of the club. To be able to have St. Louis born and raised players performing at St. Louis City is definitely an important long-term goal. What I would also say is that academy development should be analyzed after about 10 years. Because really right now, what you're looking at is the existing talent pool and our ability to scout well and do a little bit of finishing, over the last few years of coaching. For us to be able to really make an impact, we need to look at generations of players that have been through the entire cycle with us, and only then can we really start to properly assess how are we doing. Of course, we love having examples that we can rally around, because that gives us also a belief in the talent pool, what other clubs around the city are doing to prepare players, and of course our ability to then train in our style of play, get them ready, develop them through the pathways. All that for sure has a lot of merit, but we need to look at that over a longer period of time.
Wrap up with Tom Schwartz.
In the rest of the season, is it more important to reestablish the identity, or to establish or reestablish the identity, or to win games?
I think just as much. We still want to win games and we want to play our football, Tom, so I don't think that one takes away the other one. I don't think we ever lost our identity. We always played pretty much after our identity and after our philosophy. It's I don't want to dig too much into excuses, but the way, unfortunately, the MLS is built, you cannot compensate a big number of injuries simply through roster compliance. Give you an example of Seattle, who won the Champions League and then didn't make the playoffs the year after with the same team because they had 14 injuries. So you can't compensate that. But on the other hand, I believe that we could tweak bits and pieces. So coming back to where we want to play football, coming back to make people excited out there, especially also at home games, to have that St. Louis City feeling that we want to bite and scratch and fight till the last moment. Nobody's upset if you don't win a game, but you leave 110% on the field. But everybody has the right to be upset if you look stale and it looks like the team is not really that motivated. This is something where we are always really, really clear. We want to have our values, and that is go out there and leave it all on the field. Wins coming exactly with that. We saw it last year, and I believe we will see a good number of wins in the next 9 games.